All right, this is James Gray here with the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. Got another podcast coming your way. It's going to be a really interesting podcast, maybe a little bit controversial. We're dealing with a wild year. 2020 has brought things to the table that I'm sure that most of us never expected to have to deal with. I'm joined by Dean Ditto. Dean, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, say who you are, your background in this community, and what you currently serve.
Right on. Hey, so thanks for having me, man. So I'm the president of Brighton Bulldogs Football and Cheer. We're the community youth football organization here in Brighton. We have about 240 football players in our organization, about 120, 130 cheerleaders. So we got a lot of kids. I also coach wrestling with Brighton Youth Wrestling Club, and I also coach lacrosse for Brighton Youth Lacrosse. And my kids are involved in sports throughout the entire continuum. My daughter's a varsity cheerleader. And a little plug, actually the number 3 power lifter in the state at her weight class. So she's a badass.
Wow, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So you're incredibly involved in the athletics of this community. You're one of the most involved from what I hear. You're in so many different sports. You're multifaceted.
Yeah.
Your family's involved in it. You're coaching it.
Yep.
How did you get started in that?
So it was kind of, I kind of got suckered into it. So when my daughter got into cheer, because my wife wanted her to cheer, and she was involved in BBFC from the time I think she was about 2nd grade. And then when my son was old enough to play football, I volunteered to coach, and I volunteered to be an assistant coach, right? And I'd coach some flag football, which is, not really challenging, especially when you're coaching like kindergartners, first graders.
They're having fun.
The plays are called like 1 banana. We're going to do 2 banana. You do 2 banana right. Obviously, tackle football takes on a different tone, though. And so I had volunteered to coach, and I had volunteered to be an assistant coach. And so they didn't have a head coach for the team. They're like, if you can't head coach, you're going to have to be, your son's going to get moved to another team. You're going to go be assistant coach on another team that plays at a different time than your daughter plays. So I was like, fuck it, man. All right, dude, I'll do it. I'll head coach. And thankfully, I have a neighbor and a close friend. His name's Brian Lemons. Shout out to Brian Lemons. He's a head coach at Brighton High School for varsity football. Amazing coach. Took us to Ford Field last year to play for the state championship. And so that day I went and I was like, Brian, man, I'm all of a sudden a head coach for a tackle program. I haven't played football since I played for 1 season when I was in the Marine Corps. I played in high school. It had been decades since I'd actually taken the field. I was like, dude, you need to coach me up on this shit. So we sat down for a couple of afternoons, and then the rest is history. My middle son Mason has played football now for 7 years. 7 years through BBFC. He's a freshman in the high school now. He's trying to play, I should say, which is the reason why I'm here, trying to play for Brighton High School. And then when my youngest son was a first grader, he had seen, Gabby come through the program. His older brother played football, and the day we got equipment handed out to him, he put it on in the car. Took a seatbelt off, put it on the car as we're driving home, and he's just embraced football. Both my sons have tried wrestling. My youngest son stuck with it. Was part of Brighton Youth Wrestling Club's 12U state championship team this year. He's improving. He's not killing it yet, but he's sticking with it, which is grinding it out. And so he tried out lacrosse, and of course, I'm not one to sit on the sidelines. I was always interested in lacrosse, but lacrosse was one of those games when I was growing up was what all the rich East Coast kids played, right? So I was like, get a stick, get a helmet, get a ball, go out in the field and beat the shit out of people. And it's much more nuanced than that, obviously, but it's still fun, and there's a lot of analogies to coach, and a lot of kids that play football play lacrosse too, so it was an easy cross-pollination. I always want to be involved. I'm not going to have that time to be with my kids sooner or later, so I might as well jump all in right now.
No, I think it's a genius plan. It's a great way to, share passion with your kids, be alongside your kids, and do something that is helping their life. It's going to help them in the future.
Oh, for sure.
So, one thing I want to shout out Brighton for is, man, they've had incredible success in the last, I don't know how many years, but we're known for our wrestling now. The wrestling here is extremely strong in the community. The football team is strong. Brighton is really dominating in a lot of ways across the board. What do you think that success has contributed to? Do we really have people in the right places that are all clicking at this point? Is it the infrastructure of the way that Brighton, selects the people? Mm-hmm. Where's the success coming from? I went to Heartland, and Heartland had a phenomenal wrestling team. We were always second in the state. Yeah. Davison was the only team that was ahead of us. Yeah. But with that being said, Brighton, in the last couple of years, all I'm hearing about is Brighton athletics, Brighton. Right. Where's that success coming from?
It's, I think you can point to a few things for sure. So number one, John Thompson, our athletic director, awesome athletic director. I'm a firm believer in leadership. You find the right people, you give them a goal, you put them in place, and then you get the hell out of the way. You support them in what they want to do, You give them the autonomy, and basically, my opinion as a good leader, and what I see John Thompson doing is just putting essentially the fences in the pasture around how people operate. And so from, getting Brian Lemons in to coach football when there was turnover in coaches, Tony Greathouse, who was coaching wrestling for a few years, who has since moved on, getting the right people there and incenting them. But I think secondarily to that, and I'll kind of talk about this, and this might be a little bit controversial, especially if you're from Davison. So Brighton High School football goes and plays for the state championship against Davison. If you look at some of the other teams that we competed against to get there, in particular Belleville has a lot of players there that are school of choice. So Belleville is pulling top football talent from Romulus, Taylor, from other areas. Some kids, in some instances, my understanding, came from Detroit. Great. They can assemble a team like that. Davison, who we played against, is pulling talent from Flint, in some cases from Pontiac Northern, from surrounding communities. The one thing that stood out for Brighton's team is that all these kids had played together since they were kids, little kids, in the BBFC program. It used to be two different programs: Brighton Youth Football, Brighton BYFB, Brighton Youth Football, Brighton Junior Football, but it's now a singular program. All these kids had played together for, in some cases, like 12 years before they got to their senior year, and when you play together that long, you form that bond, you form that brotherhood. The community supports it, so from a management standpoint, we've got the Brighton area schools and the athletic department making the right decisions with the right people. From a community standpoint, we've got the kids that are coming up and playing together, and there's nothing that you can substitute for that team attitude, and so these guys supported each other and got there, and I think it's a similar thing with wrestling. I think we've got some kids at school of choice but Brighton's had a good wrestling program. And, part of having a good wrestling program is just having kids get out there and experience it and finding the kids that stick with it and then putting good coaches in place, and we've always managed to have that. There's families here in the Brighton area. If you really want to rewind, you go back to when Sam Amin coached Brighton, who did a great job. Sam and whose sons are subsequently went to CC and, much love to the CC program. I think it was 2 years ago, Brighton High School Wrestling lost the state championship. I think it was like 64 to -2, which is just
I remember that.
Yeah, absolutely dominating performance. The -2 stands out. But Sam had coached at Brighton, and had a great program at Brighton. So the consistency, good talent attracts good talent, and so.
Let's talk about, you're somebody that sees how incredibly important athletics are for children and youth. I mean, same Absolutely. In here. I see people that completely turn their life around, their character around. They turn bad situations into good situations by being around good people that are goal-oriented and driven. You have a family of, athletes. You coach young athletes. Let's talk about the importance for getting kids active, getting them in a team environment, holding them accountable for things. Before we go into what 2020 has brought, talk a little bit about why athletics are such a crucial staple of a successful community.
Oh, for sure. So where do I begin, man? There's I could talk about a lot of anecdotal experiences with the kids that have come through football and through wrestling. Maybe a little bit less for lacrosse because I have more experience with wrestling and football. But there's a stereotype of a kid out there that needs sports more than sports needs him. Get a little bit verklempt when I talk about that. But anyways, there's that kid who comes from a broken family, who doesn't have a father figure, who comes from a single mom who's working her ass off to get that kid to the field every day. But maybe dad lives in Georgia or something. Or I'll use an anecdote. I won't say any names in the interest of privacy, but I had a kid a couple of years ago who was being raised by his grandparents because his mom was. I believe she was recovering. She had lost custody. Let's just leave it at that. She had lost custody. Father was completely absent from the picture because he was in jail. Mom got custody, and this kid came to the field first day, and wouldn't look you in the eye. Shuffled his feet and whatnot. By the end of the season, there was a marked improvement in his attitude. He would look you in the eye. We build him up and give him the confidence. We challenge him. We hold him accountable. You can't, one of the things we say to the players all the time, if you cheat the exercise, you're not cheating me, you're cheating yourself. If you try to shortcut the run, I don't care that you didn't do like 20 yards of the run, But that 20 yards of the run is going to be a lot different if you continue to do that and somebody's chasing your ass down the field, you know. So we see these kids that show up and in almost to a man, even the ones that come in with already a tremendous amount of confidence, maybe brought on from years of success or from super supportive families, every one of them leaves the season more confident than the day they started. Every one of them has learned what they're capable of. You know, we have big kids that, and it's funny, and it's, you know, we see this in football and also in wrestling. You know, kids that, excuse me, come into the program, and, you know, if they were raised right, which, you know, almost all of them are, their parents have told them, don't touch, don't push, don't shove. You know, don't put your hands on somebody. And then they come to football, and it's like, put your hands on that guy and push him to the ground. You see that guy running out there? Tackle his ass to the ground. Or wrestling, you know, slip a half Nelson, get arm control, and try to roll him onto his belly, you know. And these kids trying to deprogram them and learn them, though, and teach them that, and teach them what their bodies are capable of. You know, there's a quote that always comes back to me that, and I can't remember, some Greek philosopher, that no man has the right to die not knowing what his body is capable of. Aristotle, thank you. And I firmly believe that. You know, you see these kids that, you know, I occasionally have kids that show up to the first day of practice that don't know how to run. You know, nobody's taught them the body mechanics, or they just not spent enough time outside running. And even at a minimum for that kid, at the end of the season, if he's playing for me, I guarantee you that kid will know how to run. You know, that kid will hopefully know how to throw a ball. That, you know, when you're throwing a football, your elbow leads and then your hand follows. You know, that when you're in a 3-point stance, you can't have all your weight back or you're going to lose it. And they know that and they learn that. And so our main goal is to have everybody have a safe season, you know. And to develop the players. You know, winning is not our primary goal. It's still a goal, but it's kind of further down on the list, you know, especially at the youth level. You know, when they get to high school, they can think about competitiveness in the meritocracy of high school football. But one of the particulars of our league is that every kid plays, no matter how good or bad you are. You have to get at least 6 plays a half, which means that the smallest, most unathletic kid is still out there for 12 plays over the course of the game. You know, we're not trying to just have him, you know, put him on one of the sidelines for a kickoff or kick return. We're trying to get that kid in some place where he can provide value to the team, balanced with developing confidence in a role. So, yeah, I feel like I'm ranting. So.
No, man, you're not ranting at all. That was really good, and it was a good breakdown. And I witnessed the same thing in here. I mean, you just met Josh Parisian when you walked through the door. Yeah. He's a gentleman that never played sports growing up, didn't have a lot of confidence, was badly overweight. Yeah, you would never believe these things. He came into so he heard about mixed martial arts through a friend, tried to practice up north. He lived in Escanaba. He fully loaded up his vehicle, packed it, you know, to the brim, drove down, moved in with his uncle and said, one day I'm going to be a fighter, and started training with us. And that was 10 years ago.
Right.
And he said, I'm going to change my life because he got a spark of confidence. He started training and he felt what you're talking about.
For sure.
He got that little moment where he might have been that kid that would have only went in for 6 plays.
Yeah.
But you know what? Something sparked in him. Now he's the #1 professional heavyweight fighter in the state of Michigan who just got signed in the UFC, the only heavyweight to ever get signed in the UFC from Michigan ever.
That's badass.
You know what I mean? And that's a kid that got that little spark. So, you know, athletics changes lives much more than on the field. Because learning to be held to a standard of excellence changes you permanently. You realize that, like, wait a second, when I am being held accountable and I give my best, I get better results. People treat me better. I can walk differently. I can stand differently. I can talk differently, because you're separating yourself from the mediocre, right?
For sure.
So let's talk a little bit about 2020. Because it's been a roller coaster beyond anything I think we could have ever pictured. If
Can I say it's been a shit show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's still putting it nicely.
Yeah.
If you wound the clock back 9 months ago and you were a prophet and you told people by this time in 2020, everyone's going to be wearing masks, we're going to be terrified of each other, we're not going to be shaking hands, no one would believe that.
No,
you would say that can't happen in America. Okay, we've had influenza's been around forever. There's diseases have been around. It would never happen in America. We wouldn't react the way that we'd have.
Right on.
You would be wrong.
Yeah, you'd be dead wrong.
You'd be dead wrong.
But nobody would have made that prediction 9 months ago because it was just such a, you know,
outlandish
thing to claim. Yeah.
So now here we are, and I just recently heard that Brighton football got canceled. Is that correct?
So all football in the state of Michigan has been canceled.
All football.
So high school football, MHSAA came out with guidelines to start practice a couple weeks ago. And so practice started, and there was guidelines. It was helmet only, no contact, organized team activities, conditioning, some offensive install. And then they were waiting on further guidance, and they came out. It'll be a week ago this past Friday. Or I'm sorry, a week ago this Wednesday. The dates escape me. But the guidance was that we're shutting down football and we're moving it to spring, as football is what they consider a high-risk sport.
Who calls these shots? Where does this come down from?
So interesting enough, you should ask, and this is let me give a plug real quick. There's actually a protest in Lansing. I shouldn't say protest. It's a rally in Lansing tomorrow for Let Them Play. And it started off with football as a groundswell of letting football come back, but it's more about all sports coming back now. It's like let them play, let them wrestle, let them swim. But who makes that call? So MHSAA, Michigan High School Athletic Association, is the governing body for all high school athletics, right? And so they essentially set the rules for all the high schools, for rules for competition, like the rules for football, like the play clock rules that goes down to that. But they also set guidance on contact hours and when you can start practice, when how you conduct your practice, how many hours a day you can have that. And so Mark Yule, who's an amazing guy, super dedicated to sports, super passionate about high school sports, had an announcement, I think it was a week ago, where he came out and said that, we're going to move everything to spring. And he announced this on this podcast, or this show called The Huge Show, which runs on AM radio. And reading between the lines, and this is where I moved from the objective that Mark Yule made the decision to a little bit subjective, is that, reading between the lines, it basically sounded like there was a lot of pressure from the state government to shut it down, which coincidentally lines up with a lot of the things you're reading about Governor Whitmer's pressure on the Big Ten to cancel college football. And so as high school football was moved to spring, and we don't know what that spring is going to look like, whether it's an 8-game season and playoffs like we would normally expect, or whether it's a 4-game season at the high school level. At the youth level, where I'm responsible for, we don't have a statewide governing body. So we look to MHSAA, to provide us a guidance on how we operate, as they are the experts. And we also have to play by the rules in as much as that we want to be respectful of the high school. We need a tremendous amount of space to conduct practices. We conduct our games in Brighton High School Stadium. So we want to be aligned with them as much as possible. So out of respect, for the guidance and whatnot, and failing any other guidance, we decided that we would also move our season to spring. Now, again, for the youth program, what that means for spring, don't know. There's a number. We could dedicate a podcast to all the logistics issues, because you'll have wrestling ending as football starts up, and lacrosse and the competition for the fields, and it's going to be.
I mean, and indefinitely into the future, flu season's going to come. Coronavirus is going to be around.
Absolutely.
Influenza is going to be around. So are we just canceling sports indefinitely because kids can get sick? Because, this virus is not even nearly the threat to children that an influenza could be.
No, it's not. And you know what? So everybody that, not to cut you off there, but everybody who signed up their son to play high school football, and everybody who signed up their child to play for BBFC, my organization, or to cheer for BBFC for my organization, did so with they've not been living under a fucking rock. They know everything that's going on, and they've been able to make an educated guess for themselves, knowing that we're going to take steps to keep the kids as safe as possible. We isolate our practices into pods where we're keeping the kids socially distant. We have COVID screening every day. Every day before practice, we're taking kids' temperatures. So anyways, to rewind a little bit, they paused the season, but BBFC is still trying to move forward. Rules. In line with the rules as much as we can. So we had our first day of organized team activities yesterday, which is essentially, conditioning and then trying to do some skills and drills. We can't put shoulder pads on. We're not going to put shoulder pads on until the spring, which is breaking kids' heart. But God damn it, we need to figure out a way to move these kids forward because speaking from my own son, we started camp, we had started practice, and that week he stood taller. He slept better. He played less video games. He was more active. He was out there in the backyard running around, focused on what he had to do for football. And if we take that away from him, I don't even know how these kids are going to react.
I want to dissect this from a couple different ways. So this Mark gentleman, who's the head of the
MHSAA.
Okay. MHSAA.
That's a mouthful.
He's the head guy. He sees the importance of athletics across the entire state. He knows how vital it is to these children. And obviously, he's been in athletics to work up to that position.
Yeah.
He understands the role. Obviously, he received pressure. But you would say he is the expert in that field on what can and can't be done, right? And when you use words like guidance, okay, I was guided by my parents to not leave my job at a car dealership to try to start my own business.
Yeah.
Which now, down the road, it turns out they're like, that was the best decision you've ever made.
That might have worked out pretty good for you.
In your entire life. I live a life that is like a dream. Some days I pinch myself and I'm like, what did I do in a past life or whatever it is to be lucky enough to be able to do what I love to do every day, right? With that being said, guidance is guidance, okay? But we all need to, in a free-thinking country, we need to critically think and we need to do our best and we need to make sure that our decisions are not going to have way worse of an impact down the road, and that, because people's mental health is on the line, people's physical health is on the line,
100% agree.
The social structure is on the line. There's much beyond just a virus on the line right now.
Right on.
So when you say the word guidance, let's say Mark had pressure from the government and had said, you know what, we're going to go through with our season. We're going to try to do as much as we can.
Yeah.
We're going to try to keep our kids safe. We're going to social distance within a reasonable thing. Within reason. You can't social distance in wrestling to some degree. You can't in football to some degree. We are going to do our best, but we're going to keep our children active. We're going to keep our children healthy. We're going to take care of their mental health and their physical health. We're going to move forward with athletics unless you can show us some underlying information that you've never revealed to the public, because what currently is available to the public does not support a decision like canceling athletics. What would take place?
Especially since we've demonstrated that we can take steps to
100%
to deal with it, to make it as safe as possible.
So what happens there when Mark, as a leader that he should be, and I'm not downing on the man at all, but I'm imagining myself in that situation where someone's pressuring me, well, you need to do this, and that's my time as a leader to put my feet in the ground and say, my belief is this, and I'm backing it based on this, and I'm going to stand strong. I'm not going to be pressured into a decision. What would take place if Mark had said athletics are going to move forward?
So completely subjective and conjecture on my part. I got to believe that Governor Whitmer would have come down and executive ordered the end of football. And executive ordering the end of football would probably necessitate the executive order end of all fall sports.
But at this point, you're already doing that. You're already shutting them all down anyway. So we might as well put your foot down, because if you look at it that way, an executive order is like almost her suggestion. If she was my mother, that would be her guidance. I'm issuing this. This isn't made a law that was voted upon and had a bill passed and was signed into effect. This is a suggestion from a person in power that is looking at information and is hopefully critically thinking and saying, is this for the best of people? Maybe. I've never met the woman. I don't know if she's a good woman, bad woman. I have never met her.
I could speculate on that.
So what I'm saying is, like, okay, that is her opinion. Right? But we have this, we're not descended from like cowardly people.
No.
That is not how humans have survived throughout human history. We've learned to be leaders. We've learned how to stand up for things. We've learned to have courage in the face of adversity. We need more of that right now.
I wholeheartedly agree.
If you're going to shut down sports and I'm Mark, I'm going to say no, right? And then unless you can have your state police show up to every game in the state and practice in the state, I'm going to say, knowing the health of these children and the mental health and the ramifications that this is going to cause for years to come, I am not going to cancel the athletics that is a vital part of society.
Yeah.
That's me. You know what I'm saying? So all these, I keep hearing this word guidance thrown around and suggestions and issues. And I mean this with no disrespect to my local public health department, but I was on the phone back and forth with a gentleman nonstop. And at one point he was saying, like, no, you need to close. And I was on the phone saying, I'm not going to. And then he and his only response to that was kind of like, what do you mean you're not going to? And I just said, I'm not going to. Unless you can show me information that disproves what I've currently been questioning, unless you can come to me and say, James, what you didn't understand was A, B, C, and D. And then as a rational person, if I was like, wow, I am putting people severely at risk, I need to take a step back, I will change my opinion. But you can't just bully me or suggest guidance into something that I don't believe in. That's not the American spirit.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And so to that extent, BBFC is moving forward. There's other communities in our league, in the Kensington Valley Youth Football Coalition, that are have completely shuttered. I don't want to call them out. I won't name them, but they're not even doing OTAs in conditioning. So we're trying to move forward as much as we can. Like I said, we're kind of at the mercy a little bit of Brighton area schools, but kind of backing up to Mark Yule. You enter in, you enter into this weird realm of MHSA is independent of the state.
That's what I thought.
It's a self-governing
body,
right? But the self-governing body self-governs school districts in high school sports, which are now political and state organizations, which are operating under the guidance, as you had said, and the direction, and having to adhere to those executive orders. It's when Mark Ewell made the announcement, one of the things I was like, he just became the most hated guy in the state.
We just need courage.
And he's in a difficult position. And I think, I agree we need courage, but at the same time, we need to keep an eye on how the entirety of the organization comes out intact at the end of this. So I refuse to accept that this is the new fucking normal, because if this is the new normal, then you and I are going to be wearing fucking masks or being asked to wear masks for the next 6-10 years.
I think it was Chicago, that even outside now they want you wearing a mask, even when you walk out of your house.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm going to say this publicly. I will go to jail if someone says you have to wear a mask outside. You'll never see me do it.
No.
You'll never see me in fresh air wearing a mask, breathing in my exhale.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. I thrive on regular fresh air.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to interact with the world around me. I'm going to shake someone's hand and then probably eat a sandwich. If I'll ever go to jail for that, you'll see me sitting in jail and I'll be laughing about this story.
Absolutely.
But to some degree, things have to be backed by reason.
They do.
And when they're backed by reason, I will gladly obey them.
Mm-hmm.
But we've gotten to the point where it's now just like do as you're told, and that's causing a big dissent among people.
It absolutely is. And certainly, I think everybody should respect the fact that there is a COVID virus out there.
100%.
Right? And for a small amount of people, it can be fatal. But if you look at the data says that for those people that it's going to be fatal for, you have some comorbidity or some pre-existing condition or something. And my heart breaks for those people. And I don't want to marginalize what's happening to them and their families. But for the rest of us, probably a little bit off topic and changing direction here, one of my biggest problems is that, as I said, the people who signed up to play football or cheer for BBFC, or who registered their kids for high school football, or who are hoping to register their kids for fall lacrosse or winter wrestling, they're aware of what the hell's going on, and they're accepting the risk. Now, the world has been, definitely not the world, sorry. The United States has been built on people knowing what the risk is and just saying, I know what the risk is, I'm going to try anyways.
Did you drive a car today?
I accepted a risk doing so. As a 50-year-old man, probably one of the most dangerous fucking things I can do is get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, have you ever had a beer? Have you ever had, you know what I mean? Do we take risks in our life?
Yeah, and so the ability to take those fucking risks, pardon my language again, is being taken away. My ability to decide the course of my life is being taken away. The ability of the families that want to play football is being taken away. I can tell you the messages I get about there's got to be a way forward, and if there is a way forward that's reasonable, I'd be willing to entertain it. I have one mom who's texting me, can we go out and can we buy our own football field? I'm like, holy shit, that'd be awesome if I had
GoFundMe.
Yeah, in Livingston County, if I had like $250,000 laying around, I would go plow down a cornfield, plant grass and stripe it tomorrow if the organization.
We've already actually had a couple teams hit me up saying, hey, can we please use your facility to train? We can run our sprints out back. Yeah. You got 13,000 square feet here. And I already said yes to a couple teams. We have teams that are going to be coming in here and running all their practices right here during the day. Wrestling, football, and maybe a hockey team that I'm negotiating with right now. I'm like, we got the facility. Come train.
Yeah.
Live your life. Because like you said, if I have children and I say, you know what's going to give my children a better life? Staying active, staying healthy, taking care of their mind, you know what I mean? And doing things that they've done that keep them in that state at such a vital time in their life.
For sure.
Keeping my kid home, riddled with anxiety, terrified about the world around them, wearing a mask every day, sitting at home.
Not at all what I want to teach my kid.
Listen, I think that person is far more likely to struggle and have problems in his future than the kid that's going outside and playing football.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And I would argue that with almost anyone. Anxiety destroys people.
It does.
Before COVID, we had a rampant opioid issue in this country. Mental health and suicides have been a major issue in this country. We are going to ramp all those things through the roof. You have to balance risk. It's not COVID or nothing. It's COVID or what other damage are we causing? You have to put it on a scale.
You and I were talking before the podcast, and I'll refer back to it. The fact that the incidence of suicide, in the only stat that comes to mind that I can cite with any accuracy, is that month over month in the month of May in the state of California, suicide attempts were up about 30%. Holy fucking shit! That's a lot. That's a lot of people who are struggling. I personally know people who have relapsed on their sobriety, people who have relapsed back into depression, and need medication. I know people that are struggling not with COVID, but about the
elective
impact.
surgeries were put on hold. People lost their
Yeah.
jobs. People lost their life's work. Poverty is going to reign.
Explode.
It's going to destroy people's families.
It is. I mean, there's one of the. I was reading this morning. One of the coming waves that's going to hit hard is the fact that there's a number of people that have been getting unemployment and have been being able to make their rent because they were getting unemployment. So when unemployment runs out, these people who are unemployed are not going to be able to make their rent. The people who own the properties are not going to be able to pay the banks. Who's going to get the bailout? Is it going to be the people who owe back rent, or is it going to be the banks? And then you're going to have people foreclosing. There's going to be a foreclosure nightmare.
Sure.
Which, a foreclosure nightmare will lead to the crash of property values, which a lot of people's net worth is tied up in their property values. But I could sit here and talk about the coming shit show. I mean, there's no shortage of how this will spiral out. And that's all largely out of my control. And I learned a long time ago,
Sure.
Worry about what you can fucking
What
control.
can I
What's in
do?
front of you? What can I control? What
Sure.
can I do? Don't worry about the fight that may be coming. In the fight right now is trying to get kids back into sports in some way, shape, or form. I still got to believe there's a hope. That
Thinking outside the box, why couldn't you just get everybody rounded up that wants to be in sports and doing athletic and literally take them to a public area and you're going to play, you're going to practice, you're going to keep these kids? What would stop an action like that? Or are you just hoping that you can somehow move it through a legislation to get the entire thing back up and running?
Well, there's, if I thought that there was a reality of us being able to actually move the needle with this rally in Lansing tomorrow,
Yeah.
I would be fooling myself. I'm still going to go, and I'm going to be loud, and I'm going to ask whoever wants to listen to let my kids play,
Sure.
and to let not just my kids play, to let any kid that wants to play. If you don't want to play, stay home.
But there's a powerless feeling because,
there's
I mean,
an absolute powerless
they
feeling.
just keep moving it. Remember when it was
Yeah.
2 weeks, and then it was, I'm going to extend the executive order, and then I'm going to extend this, and now I
Yeah.
think we're in the couple hundreds. I think she's at like almost 200 executive orders
I
issued.
think we're approaching 200.
Yeah.
Last I checked was a couple weeks ago. I think it was like 165, and she writes executive orders like I wipe my ass with toilet paper.
It's unbelievable. It's just,
It is.
hey, you're never going to attain, so just listen.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? And one of the things that bothered me a lot was the second you start giving into the guidelines, you're almost playing a game that you don't believe in.
Yeah. That's a
You're
good
not,
way.
you're not wearing a mask here. Nobody out there is wearing a mask.
Yeah.
We're not social distancing. The second I start to play into the game, I'm being a part of something that I don't believe in with 1 ounce of my heart. And what that does is I'm opening the door for more regulation. Up front, I'm saying
Yeah.
because as soon as I say, let's say I said publicly, I'm going to abide by these regulations. The moment I don't, now I can get in trouble for it because I said I was going to abide. I've said
Yeah.
from the beginning, I will not abide by this because I do not believe in it, because you cannot social distance in wrestling. You can't, like wearing a mask is going to do more damage. I'm pushing these kids to their limits physically and mentally. I'm not sticking a mask over their face. Come and
No.
try to make it through one of our workouts with our professional fighters and wear a mask the whole time.
Fuck no.
You're not going to do it.
You're not going to do it.
Or
Absolutely
your
not gonna do
heart's
it.
going to explode.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to put people at more of a risk. So with that being said, when these guidances and these guidelines are being handed down, so many people are just so desperate to try to get normal back that they're like, okay, like, do I have to put these,
Yeah.
I'll get pods, I'll do this, I'll do that. Don't play in the games you don't believe in is my message.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
And where does it end? Let me put this out there. When's the last time you heard about when legislatively a right was taken away or some law was enacted
And then they
that limited
overturned it.
something,
Hey, you know what?
and then
Our
they give it
bad.
back? Yeah, it's
My bad.
It's never fucking happened.
it doesn't happen. That's
Yeah.
not how it works. It's
Yeah.
like, push a little bit more, push a little bit more, push a little bit more.
Right.
And like the basic quote, like you teach the world how to treat you. It's like someone that's being bullied. If you let a bully pick on you a little bit, he's
Yeah.
going to pick on you more.
For
He's going
sure.
to pick on you more until one day he just beats the shit out of you just for fun.
Yeah.
Because you did nothing about it. Whereas right from the start, if you tried to bully me, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
I will stop it immediately.
For
I'm going to
sure.
show you that you can't bully me that way. As soon as I start to cower and, oh, you know what, and I avoid eye contact now, and all I'm teaching you is that it's okay, that you can do that.
Yeah.
So there's a certain level of me, and this podcast has probably sounded very rough for people that listen to me because they know I always try to just find solutions. I try to help people. I try to do the
Yeah.
right thing. But with that being said, man, there is like an extreme almost bullying going on into like you're going to be forced to
is.
do what we say regardless of whether we back it with information or not. We don't need to tell you why we're doing this. Shut up and do it.
There is.
That's a difficult thing to swallow.
There is, and I wish there was an easy way forward, especially for youth football. This fight will eventually morph into wrestling, into youth wrestling and high school wrestling. But for football,
in a new normal, can wrestling exist? Because you can't social distance. It's not possible.
No, you can't. How are you going to? There's no way. I can't even think of a metaphor of a way that you could possibly social distance in wrestling.
I said openly before, if anybody can teach a takedown without touching somebody,
Fuck no.
I'll hire you tomorrow.
Yeah, but that's impossible.
Take me to the ground, but don't touch me.
Yeah, there's probably one way to do it, but nobody's figured it out yet.
Yeah, shoot them.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a takedown.
Yeah,
but you can't do it. The sport, football, soccer,
yeah,
almost every sport, you're going to have physical contact, but that's good.
Mm-hmm.
It is good to interact with the world around you. If you sit in a bubble and you wipe everything down and you sit in fear and you're terrified 24/7, the first time you interact with the world, it's going to crush you.
It is.
It's going to crush you.
Absolutely, it is. So is there a way forward for wrestling? I hope so. Is there a way forward for wrestling to proceed with and I'm speaking out of turn. I'm a wrestling coach and I'm not on the wrestling board. I don't make decisions, but my hope would be that maybe in November things open up. The governor takes her foot off our throat.
November 4th.
November 4th, depending on how the election goes.
Sure.
Right. But I hope that the governor takes her boot off our throat. But failing that, there's got to be a way forward. And so going back to allowing people to take a risk. There's people who are going to be impacted by COVID. I think that you can run a safe wrestling program for kids. You screen them beforehand by a form. You take their temperature. If you haven't been exposed, you don't have a cough, you don't have shortness of breath or a sore throat. You don't have a fever.
It could be an incubation. They could still spread it. They could be an asymptomatic spreader.
Yeah.
Listen, those are people trying to eliminate all risk from the world. You can't do
eliminate all risk.
Didn't you drive your kids somewhere today?
Yeah.
How could you? Didn't you know that people can die in car accidents?
Yeah.
Did you freshly prepare every meal that you fed your child? How dare you? Didn't you know that food poisoning kills people?
Yeah. Or I'll even extend it a little bit more. You didn't prepare. You're worried about COVID, but you're eating fried food 6 times a week.
Yeah.
You're eating fast food multiple times a week.
You and I talked right before the podcast. I didn't know death statistics in this country because I try to focus on good things in life. 2.7 million Americans die every year on average.
Yeah. That's a lot of people.
Oh, my God. And when you break those numbers down, most of that is self-inflicted. So wait a second. All of a sudden we care about people. You know what? You got a lot of changes to make.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me I can't go wrestle with somebody because COVID's out there? You can't drink that beer. You can't smoke a cigarette. You can't do this. And some people are going to say, well, that's just me. No, beer's not. Alcohol is likely to cause you to impact other people. Mm-hmm. Can't do that. You know what I mean? There's tons of things that we would have to restructure. It's not realistic.
No.
Life has risk.
But for those people that want to make those decisions, here's my opinion on that. Those people who want to make the decisions about unhealthy lifestyles, I don't make that decision for them. If they want to take that risk, I hope you don't experience the negative consequences, but more power to you.
And like I said, if people want to play the angle, but like COVID, you'll spread it to other people. It's like,
well, then the people who are at risk should stay home.
Yeah, listen, do what you've done with the flu. Oh, you don't feel so good? Stay home.
Yeah,
rest
for
up.
Sure.
You know what? If you're any type, let's say this, I'm going to make a big statement here, but if you're in any type of health and you're a young, healthy adult child, or like I said, or an adult, go home, relax. You'll be fine. Your immune system will do its job. You'll dominate COVID like you've done with influenza your entire life, and you'll go back out in the world ready to tackle the next challenge that it presents. Relax. And if you have serious issues where COVID is a big threat to you, so is influenza.
Yeah.
So is everything else. You know what the best thing you can do is probably come to the gym.
Yeah.
Probably come and see me.
Get dirty.
Come and get your life going. Get your body moving. Eat healthier. Work harder. That's probably your best chance.
Cholesterol.
Coronaviruses are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the best thing you can do is actually go fight. Learn for one time in your life, and maybe don't take offense to this, but learn how to be a fighter. Step up instead of stepping back. Stand up to challenges instead of cowering. COVID can be terrifying, but you're powerful when you work towards being powerful.
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with you. And you don't even have to be the literal fighter that you're talking about with striking and grappling.
In your mind.
You can learn the fighting mindset.
I'm going to eat better.
Yeah.
I'm going to work harder. You know what? Life has been tough. I'm going to give my best.
Yeah.
I'm going to get up off the couch today. I'm going to shut off the news that's pumping me full of fear, that's making me terrified. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go for a jog. If I can't jog, I'm going to go for a walk.
Yeah,
I'm going to do things that are good for me.
I'm going to get up early. I'm going to go for that run. So last night, I get home from our rudimentary practice in OTAs, eat dinner, all of a sudden it's 9 o'clock at night, dog ass tired. You know what? I need to go for a fucking run. Hour on the treadmill, dripping sweat with the heater going in there, you know. And granted, I'm not the picture of health. I didn't consider myself fat until I walked in here, and there's all these ripped fighters walking around. So I'm like, fuck, man, it's a motivation for me. But yeah, people need to embrace that. You know, we spend so much time talking about, you know, oh, we're going to have to wait to get back to normal until we have a vaccine, and I have some serious issue with that.
Thank God we have a vaccine for the flu, and it doesn't hurt anybody anymore, right? I mean, we got a vaccination for the flu, and now the flu doesn't kill anyone, right?
Well,
it still?
Let's take it a different direction. You know, COVID's a coronavirus, right?
Yes.
Coronavirus is in the same class of viruses that cause a common cold.
Yeah.
We've been unsuccessful for the last century in creating a vaccine for the common cold.
If you didn't know that I was throwing sarcasm,
yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're putting down, man. How are we judging that we're going to be so successful? And then in order for that vaccine to be effective, that vaccine has to be taken by a certain, I can't remember the percentage.
Yeah, there's a threshold you have to hit. Yep.
And honestly, I don't think we're tracking to that threshold. You know, I might not have a problem with the vaccine. I'd really like to see it in like a couple of years of data of people having taken it before I do it. Like the Russians just announced they have the first corona vaccine, and I'm certain that, you know, the Russian solution is usually just throwing a bunch of bodies at a problem until people stop dying.
I'll take my immune system on this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to roll the dice. I'm going to trust in my immune system. And you know what? I should have the ability to do that. At some point, if they mandate vaccines, that's going to be a wild world to live in. I'm going to say no. My human immune system produces antigens and antibodies, and once I experience a virus and conquer it, that is how I will gain my immunity.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, that might fade, James. Then I'll go through it again.
Yeah.
Okay? I fought in a cage. I'm not worried about having to sit at home and have some body soreness.
It's going to fade every year. The virus mutates. So this COVID will mutate.
Yeah.
At some point in time, this COVID-19 will mutate. You know, hopefully it doesn't mutate into anything more fatal.
Generally, they mutate to be less fatal. That's
Yeah.
the common theme.
Because we developed T cell, I think they're calling it T cell
B cells
immunity.
and T cells.
Yeah,
That's
T-cell
what makes your
immunity.
immunity.
But every year, everybody gets a cold, you know, and whether it's, you know, just the sniffles or whether you get the full blown cold, it's because that virus is mutating. Your body has to adapt to it, and part of adapting to it and dealing with it is experiencing that and building up the immunity to that particular version of it. You know,
Sure.
This virus isn't going away. You know, our kids and our kids will experience this virus on some level. And so, at what point, you know, are we looking at now? And this is, you know, scary, apocalyptic. Are we looking at my kids having to wear masks because of this fucking coronavirus?
I mean, at the end of the day, if the theoretical threat, if it was a 3 to 10% mortality rate virus, we might have had to restructure things a lot. At this point, it is so far from the initial predictions. It's just another one of Neil Ferguson's absolute massacre predictions. Have you looked at some of his other predictions?
No.
Oh my. Go home, look up Neil Ferguson. So he was the gentleman from the London Imperial College. He's the one that made the initial predictions that the whole world used, right? Okay. So anyway, he made predictions for mad cow, foot and mouth, swine flu, bird flu. I'll give you an example for bird flu. For bird flu, he said millions of people worldwide were going to die for bird flu.
Right.
Less than 20,000 ever did. He made predictions for swine flu, foot and mouth, mad cow. They were so far from the realm of reality. If you walked up to a 5-year-old and you said, there's a new thing called bird flu, how many people do you think are going to die? They will be closer than this gentleman that made the prediction about coronavirus. Now, I'm not saying that he hasn't made great predictions, but what I'm saying is when the guy throws out a number, it's theoretical. It's what could happen.
Right.
That's where our job as people comes in to like look at data, look at information, look at facts, and then actually figure out the real threat. The theoretical threat was here. We are so far low. At this point, it's not even influenza. It's not, and that's going to piss people off. The cases have been rising forever, and the deaths have been still non-existent, and that's throwing in anyone in many places at the time of death simply having COVID.
Yeah.
Many states, you just have it, you're going into the count. If we did that with influenza would kill hundreds of thousands every single season. So with that being said, this is almost a non-existent threat for young, healthy adults and kids, and we are still reacting as if Neil Ferguson's initial predictions were real.
And so I lean into this. So you and I were talking before the podcast started, and one of the things that I brought up is that a friend had posted the video from when Governor Gretchen Whitmer had instituted the mandatory stay-at-home, right? And so this was before we knew a lot about what was going on. Everything was hell and brimfire. You know, we were looking at out of all the people in the state, we were looking at 3 million people getting it. We were looking at 1 million people hospitalized, which had that come to fruition would have been a shit show. I mean,
100%.
100%.
That's why I closed my gym. The second day I heard all that, I shut everything down.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure you did too. I said, "Whoa."
Yeah, I've been working from home with the exception of this week since March 12th. You know, and everything I posted on Facebook was wash your fucking hands, stay the fuck at home. But now, if we look at that in the context of where we are now, and the fact that apocalyptic prediction, thank God, didn't come true. It was wrong. It was wrong. But nobody has, and I would hope that the governor, in all her professing about being data-driven and being transparent, would readdress that and revisit that. Because I think if she did, and if she were having an honest conversation,
she'd earn my respect.
She would earn my respect. But I don't know that that's possible because, you know, up until 2 weeks ago, I think she was still trying out for a VP position. She might be auditioning for a cabinet position right now. I don't think that she's being honest and forthcoming.
You can't really use the word transparent when the 3 state representatives that I spoke to, and I reached out to 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. I said, hey, I don't want a biased objective. I just want you guys to tell me, okay?
Yeah.
So with that being said, all 3 state representatives were saying she was not showing the information that she had with them. She wasn't discussing why she was making her policies with them. She was basically saying like, hey, you need to trust the decisions I make. I have information that you don't have. You can't use the word transparent if you're not going to be transparent. Yeah. You can't use the word honest if you're not going to be honest. I will literally have more respect for you if you got up in front of us and said, I want to be a tyrant. Fuck you. I don't care about you.
At least unless you
listen to me. You know what? I would go, God damn, that. You know what? They're straightforward.
I'm going to pop some popcorn and see how this goes.
Yep. I'm going to tell you all to sit down and shut up. And if you disobey me, I'm going to take action against you. I'd be like, you know what? At least she's honest. Because we can admire certain qualities in people like honesty. Even if you're an asshole. If you're an open ass, okay, you need to figure your life out, but at least you're honest about it. With that being said, man, this has just been an absolute wreck. And like I said, I had no feelings, good or bad, about the governor before all this event. And at this point, I don't know how I can have good feelings because it's just shit show after shit show, all in the name of like, you know, well, you have to have faith in the fact that I'm trying to help you. I just don't, okay? And at the end of the day, I'd love to sit down and speak to her, a representative of hers, the state attorney general, anybody, and have someone explain to me, where the fuck are you coming from?
Absolutely.
Because it's just so far from anything that I can understand, and I'm usually a very intelligent guy. I break things down extremely well. I've been smart my whole life. I have a huge network. We don't get it.
Yeah.
And if you could make us understand, we'd probably be on your side.
So I was at the Brighton Farmer Market this weekend. Big plug for the Brighton Farmer Market, and you know, got my fruits and vegetables. You know, there's a couple places there that had amazing heirloom tomatoes. Sorry, they were that good that I feel like I have to mention.
It's already sucking me in.
It is. But they had a tent there, and the tent was taking signatures on the petition from I think it's Free Michigan, right? So obviously I went over there and I was happy to sign it. And I was talking to one of the women behind the counter, and come to find out, she's State Representative Lana Theis.
Oh, Lana Theis.
Yeah, Lana Theis. Sorry,
yeah.
Slaughtered her last name. Lana, if you're watching, sorry. But I had a good conversation with her, and one of the things she said, I was like, I literally said, you got to be fucking kidding me. As a committee chair for the Education Committee, I believe it is, I asked, because I was asking her, what is the governor's thought process on sports?
Yeah, help me understand.
Sports. Help me understand. What have you heard? Is there anything you can share? And she's like, I've not had a single conversation with her. Here's a fucking legislative committee chair. Here's a legislative committee chair who's not had a single discussion with the governor, or who is telling me she has not had a single discussion with the governor. How do you govern? I mean, that's not a fucking throne. That's an office that you hold. And that office means that you have to build coalitions. You have to cross the aisle.
Checks and balances.
Checks and balances. How do you not have a discussion with your committee chair?
During a pandemic.
During a pandemic. It's ridiculous that if that is, in fact, the true state of affairs, that I lost a little bit of hope there, because that tells me that there's not viewpoints coming in, that there's not communication, that the legislature isn't being allowed to do what they do.
It's a tyrannical approach.
It's a bit of a tyrannical approach from what I see. You know, I hope that history proves me wrong. You know, maybe if there is some data that would prove that canceling sports is the right thing to do. I'd like to think I'm a smart guy. I'm not the brightest bulb in the marquee, but I've gotten fairly far in life. I've seen a lot of things. I've experienced a lot of things. If there's data that supports the approach, why haven't I seen it?
You would just show it if there was, man. I mean, you would just show it. They wouldn't hide it.
Oh,
they wouldn't,
for sure.
It wouldn't smoke and mirrors it. If there was data backing their things, you wouldn't have to fudge numbers. You wouldn't have to throw someone that dies in a car accident into being COVID. You would just say, guys, look at this. This is the data. This is the facts. What can we do as a team? And everyone would be going, oh, my God, this is terrible. It's not that. And we all know it's not that. And at this point, it's just a mess. So let's talk a little bit about having hope for the future. At this point, what do we do? From right now, what efforts are you going to try to make? What can we do in this community? How can we get our people back on their feet before it gets worse, man? Before we damage some of these kids permanently, and before we ruin lives permanently.
So we're coming into so fall is a big season. Kids are back in school. They're getting funny story. If any other season, I would have a conversation at the start of the season with parents to say, hey, your kids are going to get a cold. They're going to show up with snot running down their nose, which is fine. Only keep them home if they have a fever, right? Kids' immune systems aren't going to get that exercise if they don't go back to school. Thankfully, Brighton area schools, and what I think is a good compromise move, is going a 2-1-2.
Yeah, shout out to Brighton for trying to do something.
Yeah, and to Howell, too. For Howell's, I think, third day back today, if I'm not mistaken. So shout out to Howell, because you gotta try. I think demonstrating to our kids that we got to try. That's the reason why we could have packed up our helmets, taken all our gear, and said, "Okay, kids, we'll see you in the spring." We're trying as much as we can, given some of the constraints that we have to deal with, by having yesterday's practice, by having practice tomorrow, by going as far as we can into the fall until somebody tells us to stop. And we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to fight.
I almost laughed out loud because one of the students that trains here was just back at school, and they have to wear masks all day.
Yeah.
And anyway,
can you imagine being a fucking 5-year-old or a 6-year-old?
Wearing a mask. I know my personality type. I would have got expelled for school because I wouldn't do it. Unless you could show me why, I won't do things. I just won't.
Yeah.
It's a personality flaw, probably. Yeah. And if you can't prove to me why something should be done, I won't do it.
Yeah.
But with
You're the kid that touched the hot stove when they
100%.
Right?
And then once I learned, I'd be okay. Maybe I shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? If you could show me the coils were red and that was going to harm me, I'd be like, okay, I'll learn from that. But if not, you can't just say, don't touch this brick or you're going to pass out. You know what I'm going to do?
Really? Oh, shit.
And then I'm going to say, no, you lied to me. That was not good information. Don't tell other people that. That's just how I've been my whole life. With that being said, one of the kids came in and they showed me a video here. They get a 10-minute break where everyone gets to go outside and take off their masks for 10 minutes. All of the kids huddled together right on top of each other, no mask on, and all breathed.
The reason for the mask in the first place.
You destroyed your entire validity in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you put all of the kids right on top of each other. No, just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. Stop. And take a step back, get your emotions out of this debate, and say what is intelligent and what's not. And then from there, let's come up with a plan as people, and let's turn this community around. And you know what? I have a lot of pride in Brighton. I have a lot of pride in Livingston County. I try to do a lot. I love this county. I love this city. I love these people. Let's lead the way. Let's be the group of people that pulled our emotions out of this and said, we are going to get back on our feet normal. Not new normal, normal.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe we'll do better than we ever had. The only new normal might be we'll do the old version with a little bit extra. You know what? Let's go above and beyond to show each other that we care about each other. Forget this idea that we need to get rid of all sports and stay away from each other.
No, fuck, I don't want to live in a world like that.
Livingston County, I am requesting, if you're one of the people that has a voice, let's lead the way. We have so much passion in this community. We have so many great people. We have so many future, successful business leaders and influencers. Let's lead the way. We have to come together and we have to try to turn this thing around before it's too late, man.
Yeah.
Like hearing the story at the beginning, you had tears in your eyes when you started talking about the idea of how much these sports matter to these young kids. And I've seen it too. Dude, I know a couple kids in this building that I truly believe, especially from the court program, would have been in jail or been gone to drugs had they not channeled their energy into something.
Yeah.
Let's not destroy that, man.
I'll tell you a personal story, man. I was that kid that needed sports more than sports needed me. I was that kid who struggled to find his tribe, who struggled to find his voice.
That's why you care about people.
That's why I care, because I see these kids who need a hand up, and I think that had I had a hand up, or had I had a better hand up, or thankful to those people that gave me those hands up. I can still remember my 8th grade coach's name, Charlie Boclatian. And I remember Charlie because Charlie was there to build you up. And Charlie, if you happen to be fucking watching, thanks, man. I also remember the shitty coach we had, George, who was, I remember him. And I want to be the Charlie Boclatian to my kids. But that the idea that and we talked about this before the podcast, New normal, fuck that. I don't want a new normal. I want us to go back to how things were. And that sounds, maybe some people might say that sounds a little narrow, but if we accept the new normal is that we can surrender our liberties, that our ability to accept risk based on our own circumstances is taken away from us. That's not a good new normal. That needle is moved. And I think we already said it, that, how often is when something has been taken away, does the state give it back? It never does. It never does. Or if it does, it's like moving hell and earth to get it done. That doesn't happen. The normal needs, the new normal needs to go back to the normal of being able to take risks, being able to compete, learning the metaphor of sports, that life is a meritocracy. We will teach you the skills, but it's up to you to apply the skills. That's to talk about wrestling for a second. On football, you got 11 men on the field, right? If the play is going to the right, like if you're running a 28 sweep and you happen to be the left tight end, you might be able to slow down. You might be able to get away with that, right? Wrestling, I always encourage the kids to move from football to wrestling. You learn to be part of a team on football. You learn individual grit and determination, because if you fail out on the mat, if you fall short out on the mat, it's either because your skills weren't up to par or you didn't have the right conditioning. And there's only one person you can blame that on, and that's you. So, I want kids to learn that lesson, but those kids aren't going to learn that lesson. There's going to be kids that don't come back to football, or don't go to wrestling, or don't go to lacrosse, or don't go to any other sport, or swimming, or tennis, or volleyball, because this year they're not being able to give the opportunity. I'm ranting right now. I'm sorry. It struck a passionate chord. My son, about a year ago, asked me a question. Dad, is Tom Brady the best quarterback ever? And I thought about it for a second. I was like, no, Tom Brady is the best quarterback that ever played the game. There's probably some kid out there that never was thrown a football, that never stepped onto the gridiron, who would be a better quarterback than Tom Brady could ever be. But he doesn't know. He'll never know, because he's never given that opportunity. There's going to be a kid out there that could go play college ball that's not going to get that opportunity from today. There's going to be kids out there whose life could change because they're not being given that opportunity to play sports. And certain people in Lansing aren't taking that into consideration. It's our risk to accept. Let people accept that risk and move forward with it.
Sure. I mean, imagine if...
Sorry, that was a horrible rant. It might not have made sense.
No, I'm telling you right now, this year needs some rants.
Yeah.
This year needs some rants. Some
For sure.
people...
That felt cathartic too, man. Yeah. I feel cleansed now.
Dude, I tell you what, some people that have been holding on to so much, rant.
Yeah.
Speak your mind.
Yeah.
Speak your mind intelligently. Evaluate your thoughts. Figure out why you feel the way you feel. We need more of that.
For sure.
Imagine Michael Jordan goes home when he got cut from his high school basketball team, never plays again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Little moments in your life can drastically alter the future. Imagine Josh Parisian, the guy I told you about in the beginning, never packs up his car and comes down. He's the number one heavyweight in Michigan. He's the only guy to ever make it to the UFC.
Decided to stay home in Escanaba because it was a safe thing to do, right?
He didn't grow up playing sports. He didn't grow up being successful. He didn't grow up with a good family home structure. Mm-hmm. The man made a decision, gave a shot on himself, and made it. We need to not rob our children in the future from these opportunities.
Right now, there's a kid in Escanaba who's probably not going to take that same risk because it's not the right time. I can't do it because of COVID. I can't travel downstate.
Sure.
I don't know if I have the opportunity. And that's a shame.
I have a couple kids in this building that I'm not going to name the families. There's two kids in particular that really stand out to me. These kids are so talented, and they're young kids, so talented, but their parents are really, really big on the COVID train.
Right.
They pulled both kids out. They're not letting them train anymore. The kid had passion, which is what you look for in people. They have that fire. They desire it. They will go through the workout. They won't complain. They'll work hard. They'll face adversity. They have it. And now all of a sudden it's being taken because it's too risky. You know what, in my mind, too risky is? A mediocre life that you hate that leads to depression and suicide or something like that.
Fuck yeah. Dude.
That, to me, I would risk facing tuberculosis on a regular basis to be able to chase a dream and live with passion.
Absolutely.
Than live a mediocre, clock in somewhere that I hate for 50 years of my life until it's done.
So let me ask you a question without naming those kids and being respectful of privacy. Do the parents compete, or have the parents ever competed?
I don't
really
really know the background,
wrestle?
but I look at it this way. They're both not in athletics now, and it's not enough of a passion that, because it takes passion in a weird way to understand passion.
Yeah, for sure.
Like when you fall in love with a sport or anything, and you see that in someone else, you understand what they're going through. Let's say you have two parents that were never into athletics, or let's say they just weren't passionate people towards something. Like, you know what? I have a calling to do this.
For sure.
If they've never experienced that, they can't even get into the mind of what it's like to desire something so bad, to be like, or maybe to get that spark that we were talking about, that young kid that goes, you know what? This might be it. This might be what can change my life.
Yeah.
So they don't understand it. So in their mind, they go, no, be safe. You could be, this is going to sound blunt. You could be completely ruining your child's life by taking away their opportunity. Imagine if Josh Parisian's parents, to use him as an example, because he's all over the. Imagine if they said, sorry, honey, there's a virus in the world. We're not going to let you go to this practice. And he never was able to step on the mat. And now he's going to live a life that most people dream of. What are you causing damage to by your fears that your child should not be robbed from?
So it was a leading question. You're actually causing generational damage. Because if you instill that fear into your kids, they've learned that. And so how are they? Adults pass on to their kids their own fears and worries, right? It's a common thing, and those kids will then. It's a difficult cycle to break. You teach kids to operate from a position of fear. They're going to teach their kids to operate from a position of fear. And then I really think you're doing not just damage to the familial line about the ability to take risks and accept risks and to not operate from a position of fear. You're doing damage to society, because there's too many, my humble opinion, there's too many people that are afraid to take risks. There's too many people that are afraid to take that first step off the couch.
100%.
Yeah, there's too many people there's too many kids out there that could be the next Tom Brady, but are just never being given the opportunity, or aren't going to be given the opportunity, or are afraid to take that, afraid to take that first step, And if you teach fear and you operate from a position of fear, America, I'm going to sound a little hugely overly patriotic and maybe a little bit jingoistic, is that America wasn't built on fear. America was built on storming the beaches in Normandy. America was built on standing up to the British in Boston. America was built on the civil rights movement. If any of those people had operated from a position of fear, where the fuck would we be right now?
I'm telling you right now, there's a weird thing in my generation and the next generation where there's this hatred for America. I'm 32.
Okay.
There's this hatred for America, and America's this terrible place, and there's so much oppression, and there's travel.
Yeah. Oh.
I've been to rural China. I've been to China 4 times. I've been to Brazil. I've seen the favelas in Brazil. I've been to. Listen, if you think America is bad and you think your suburban life is terrible here, or even the bad areas in America, maybe with some extreme exceptions, are not even close to common areas of parts of China that I've seen, or parts of Brazil. The conditions they live in there are so unbelievably bad. I mean, if you spoke out against the government in China, that you just disappear the next day and nobody, do something about it.
Yeah,
you can't.
Even what's considered the Western world, EU does not have the freedoms that we
100%.
have.
So you know what? It's almost like we were born with this American spirit that we're supposed to stand up for what we believe in. We're supposed to fight back against oppression. We're supposed to do a lot of these things because that is the spirit of America.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously,
agree.
we have our failures. We have our things that we could do better.
Everything does. Everybody does. Though.
Everybody does. But if you can't look around you and appreciate the place that you live in, you're already coming from a place of hatred or anger or frustration, and you're going to cause more of that.
Absolutely.
So there's this weird thing that I've been watching, because normally I don't watch politics, but it almost feels to me like there's two warring parts of the nation right now.
Yeah.
And one side loves the country and they love people and they have a certain admiration for what we've established. And there is another side that does not like what America is. That
wants to break it down.
Wants to shatter what America is. Listen, if you're already starting from that place, I'm not following you.
No.
I'm not following someone that thinks we need to destroy the land. Do we need to do better in a lot of ways? Yes. Should racism be gone? Absolutely. Should we work to take away systematic oppression? For sure.
100%.
But if you can't acknowledge that we've been doing that, you are blind.
Yeah. Condoleezza Rice said, so Condoleezza Rice, former,
of course.
Former Secretary of, was she Secretary of State?
I don't know that, but I mean, I've read a lot about Condoleezza Rice.
So Condoleezza Rice, woman of color, makes mention that for these people that are complaining about the state of race, it's not good right now. It's not perfect. But she said, and I wholeheartedly believe her when she says that if you compare today to 1960s, we are far better off.
We're better off now than we were in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Every generation has gotten better.
And we'll continue to move the needle on it. And you got to continue to work. It's progress.
It's progress. Yeah. Other countries still have terrible racism. I had a gentleman who I'm not going to name who actually coached here a little bit, was from Russia. he is terribly racist. And I had no idea until I was on a trip with him one time, and this is right before we stopped being around each other. And he made a comment that I went, "What?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Did you just?" And he's like, "What do you like?" He grew up and he lived his entire life in Russia, and he's like, "What are you talking about? It's totally normal. That's not racist. That's just." Which, don't get me wrong, it wasn't something that was like, "Okay, I have to punch this man for what he just said." But it was so obvious that he looked at himself differently than other people that I was like, "Yo, that's not good. You need to work on that."
Yeah.
But like he's like, "Man, in my country, this is not a problem at all. Like this is completely normal."
But here in our country, we should be calling that out.
100%. Listen, you should call out racism. You should work to make people better. You should work to treat people better. But the idea that we need to destroy what we've built, like, okay, we have this certain structure that's coming out. You know what? This is how I train fighters. I'm going to give you an analogy. I pretend like when people come in, they're just a giant block of clay.
Yeah.
And I know what the final product should look like, but I can't get there quickly. I have to slowly take pieces off that are not correct.
Right.
And today I'm going to correct your balance on this kick. And then I'm going to work on your sprawls and your whizzer. And today I'm going to work on your triangle choke. And I'm trying to slowly carve the final product, right? You can't just, it would be great to just snap your fingers and everything's great. It's not like that. So we have to keep working. But there's like there's one side fighting to like, just destroy the clay, blow it up, and start all over.
Yeah.
No.
Which by the way, has never fucking worked at any point in history. Totally. And this is where if you're still waiting for us to talk about youth sports, you probably want to scrub forward a couple minutes. But there's all these people talking about socialism, right?
Sure.
Completely disconnected
That have never
from
experienced socialism.
They've never experienced socialism, and the position that, well, that wasn't really socialism. That's not really socialism. Well, Venezuela isn't really socialism.
Excuses. Make excuses.
Yeah, excuses. Like, you could do any better. Okay, we're in an imperfect democracy. Our constitutional republic is imperfect, but it's the best thing in the world. We wouldn't be having, if we lived in a system that was as oppressive as some people are saying it is, there wouldn't be riots in Portland. There would just be a news blackout and a bunch of people that end up in a gulag somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I have people that don't live in this country that are good friends of mine. A gentleman from Brazil that's flying up, actually just landed in Vegas yesterday. They want to be in America.
Yeah.
They're like, "Man, you guys have it so good." So while you're screaming about how terrible it is, people want to be here. And like I said, don't take it that I'm saying this place is perfect, because I know it's not. I don't live in a fantasy world, but we do a good job.
Yeah.
And we can continue to do a better job if we come together. But all of this hate and anger and this is just creating more divide. We're going to have a bigger issue trying to fix things.
It is. And you know what? Working together to solve it, which I think, politically both sides could move closer to the center
100%.
to work together on it, because as much as I just basically slam the people who are calling for socialism, the ultra conservatives could move a little bit closer to the center and have a respectful dialogue, which, to the point, there's a lack of respect in these dialogues. And there's so many, and I'm sure you could probably tell a bunch of stories about keyboard warriors. Everybody thinks everybody has a voice on social media, and nobody has to defend that voice and look somebody in the eye when they're making a slanderous, pejorative statement.
They're not really accountable for anything.
They're not accountable to it. They don't see how it impacts somebody. They can just put it out there, walk the hell away from it, and then not have to deal with it literally ever again. People need to, I myself, in the last year, have made a more conscious effort to be more respectful of people on social media, and it's a fucking challenge, man.
Because some things infuriate you, sure.
Yeah, some things you write the response and you just delete it. I'm gonna walk the fuck away. I'm gonna catch my breath,
Last thing on this topic is, like, listen, when you get your shit together and you start figuring life out, capitalism's not bad. You get rewarded for working hard.
Yeah.
If you are lazy, it sucks. You don't just get a paycheck. You don't get to just move through society and be successful and live a life of your dreams if you don't work for it. But you know what? It doesn't work to reward laziness. It doesn't. No. Can we improve education in some areas? Sure. Can we improve systems in some areas? Sure. But listen, sports are something where the person that works harder and puts in more hours, and they get the success.
It's meritocracy. Yeah.
Listen, you got to give your best. If you are furious about the country around you, honestly take a look in your mirror tonight and ask yourself, am I really giving my best? Do I try my best in this life?
There's probably not a lot of people that can answer that question in the affirmative.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if I could. I mean, I bust my ass, I'm sure, but you know what? you can always do more.
Yeah.
Unless you're dying, you can always do more.
So stop pointing your finger outside this year with all this craziness. Take a moment to look inside and say, what can I do a little bit better? How can I contribute more? What can I do to just lead by example for people? If we all do that, the world will get much better just on that alone. And then maybe it'll bring people back together close enough that I can say, hey, I'm struggling for my best. And I know you are too.
Yeah.
And we're struggling for the best of this society. Let's work together more.
Yeah.
If we can achieve that, awesome, man.
Yeah.
So before we're, this has been a stellar podcast.
This has been a fucking blast.
We're at 70 minutes just crushing it. Yes.
Awesome, man.
So what I would just say is, just anything else you want to record about, youth sports, things that people in the community could do, just any suggestions or anything you want to capture in this moment in time, and we'll forever have this to hopefully look back one day that we lived through a nightmare of a year, but we solved our problems.
I would say, know that the folks that are working to deliver youth sports to the community, even in high school sports as well, even though I don't speak for high school sports, have the best interests of the kids in mind. I'm competitive. I like to win. I hate to lose much more than I like to win. Who doesn't fucking like to win? If you don't like to win, you're nuts. But know that as we try to move forward with youth sports and with any kind of sports, the overwhelming majority, 99% of the coaches are there to help build up the kids. And we're going to do what we can to keep them safe always. And we're working hard to deliver sports, not for our benefit. I've won the games I'm going to win. I've lost the games I'm going to lose. I want your kid to experience winning. I want your kid to experience losing and learn because honestly, you learn a whole lot more losing than you do winning.
You win or you learn.
Yeah, you win or the else doesn't stand for loss, stands for learn. I want your kids to experience that. And if sports continues to be taken away from us this season, if what little we can do for football gets taken away, or if wrestling gets taken away, your kids are not going to learn that lesson, or that lesson will be delayed. Know that the coaches and the board members on these organizations are working hard and diligently to get these open up in a safe way. Contact your legislature, make pressure on the government. Let them know that this is what you want. Most importantly, let them know that you want to be able to take a risk, an informed risk, that you know about, to be able to participate in these things. I think outside of that, that'd probably be the summary. We're trying to move forward. Work with us. Don't work against us. Know that we're doing our best.
And remember, you don't have to be involved.
No, I'm not.
I mean, I don't want to be rude by that statement, but I've had to tell a couple people here that, well, what about, can you No, I can't minimize every risk, and I'll never be able to. And I never could in 2019.
No.
You just didn't think about it as much. The media didn't tell you that the flu can kill you too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You knew that, but you didn't really care about it.
Yeah, you kind of turned a blind eye.
You kind of turned a blind eye because it's part of life. And it's just a part of life, man. It's a part of life. If you're not in good health, some things can get you. That's
Absolutely.
how it works. So if you are terrified, you do not need to be a part of it. But please don't try to destroy it for somebody else just because you're not involved.
I know. I don't know what's good for James, and James doesn't know what's good for Dean. Just like I don't know what's good for Tom, Dick, and Sally out on the road. I would end with, if you don't play sports, that's fine. I respect that decision. I can't make you play sports. I want you to make the decision that's right for you. But if you make that decision for your kids not to play sports, for God's sakes, get them outside. Get them to, talking about the Livingston County area, Brighton Rec area, Island Lake, take them out, hike a trail, go run, go mountain bike, go do something. If you let your kids sit on the couch and play Call of Duty all day, that ain't doing nothing for them. You're just setting them up for an unhealthy lifestyle. You're not teaching them habits. There's so many good places to go outside. If you're not going to play sports, go make your own sport. Kick them off the couch. Get them out there.
The last thing I'll say, too, is if you have a kid with passion, if you have a kid that is asking, please, let me do this. I want to play this. Don't smother that.
No.
It's rare that people get that spark in life where they are really motivated to try to do something. It's rare. So many people float through this life with no passion in them at all, and they just go from thing to thing.
It's sad.
It's sad, man.
Very sad.
I almost have a big sense of pity for people that never found a spark in themselves.
I know, right? That's because I think
something
I said
that
earlier,
fires you up, man.
Early in the podcast, nobody has a right to, the Aristotle quote, nobody has a right to go through life not knowing what their body is capable of. Find your passion, and hopefully it's, in my opinion, it may be sports, investigate sports. But if it's something, for God's sakes, get behind that. If there's a spark of something, you're passionate about, throw fire on that fuel.
Imagine if you were Tom Brady's parents, okay, and there's two parallel universes. There's a universe where, well, because he touched the same football as somebody else and you think he might get COVID and that's going to, you're not going to let him play sports. What parallel does that put Tom Brady on? And what about when you're the parents that allowed the kid to take the risk? You do your best, you keep him healthy, you do everything that you can for him in this life, and now your son grows up to be Tom Brady, one of the greatest of all time, living a life that people would only dream of doing, right? You could be directly responsible for that. So please keep in mind the big picture. Don't get tunnel vision and just look at coronavirus. Look at the entire perspective of life and try to do your best. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode today. 75 minutes with Dean Ditto. Absolutely crushed it.
It was a quick and effortless 75 minutes, let me tell you. Thanks for having me on. I super appreciate it, man.
No problem, man. Like I said, I don't even ask. I didn't have a single question written down. You saw, I don't do that. I like organic conversation. I like challenging dialogue. And I like finding, real emotion and stuff. And you don't get that from interviews. You get that from really just talking about life.
Yeah.
So, man, I appreciate it so much. Again, this was James Gray from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. If you're in a tough spot right now and you want to get your kids training or your family training, we're open. We have martial arts classes here, fitness classes here. We're even letting teams come in here and practice in a safe environment. And, we're never going to back down. That's just who I am, and it's who I'll be for the rest of my life. So,
amen.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Dean, for being here. And
My
we'll
pleasure.
wrap this thing up.